Good morning. I'm going to do a little bit of scouting today. I don't know how this video is going to turn out. We're just going to try something new. I've hunted this WMA quite often. I've got my little honey holes here and there, but I'm going to try to do like an overall view of this place. What it's turning into basically. And probably what the hunting's going to be in the future. I don't know how well this video is going to come over, but I'm at Cahaba Wildlife Management Area, and this management area used to be really some jam up properties. The timber companies are coming in here and they're pretty much clear cutting. I reckon they're going to clear cut every bit of it eventually. Used to be USX Properties. Opus Corporation, I think, is probably doing the majority of the timber management on these properties. And a lot of it has been sold. Residential areas are pretty much encroaching on the properties. They're blocking roads. Some of the accesses that we used to be able to get into this management area have gone. One biologist at one particular time several years ago told me this management area probably would not exist in 5 to 6 years. Well, it's at that 5 to 6 year mark at this point. The management area is still here. The wildlife refuge has actually gained a little bit of property. Maybe if we do a little bit of pushback from the hunter's point of view, we might be able to save this management area, at least parts of it. Maybe the Forever Wild program can kick in and fund some of it. I don't know. I'm not a politician. I'm just a deer hunter. But this is what it's come to, guys. We got to try to fight and stick together and keep our public lands public. We won't have them if we don't. You know, the woods for the most part looked a lot like this. You had a lot of hardwood areas and pines mixed, 30-year-old timber. You can find little patches of thick stuff here and there and locate your deer. And this is what it's going to turn into. This is basically the other side of the road. And that's what you're going to see. The only timber you see out there is the SMZ. And it's clearly a mile across this cutover. Now you can hunt stuff like this if you got a high-powered rifle and you're patient. These deer will come out in this open wood. You give this a couple of years, you let the green vegetation come back and get real thick, it'll become really good deer hunting for a little while. And they'll start utilizing it pretty heavy. You got kiosk stations placed all across the WMA, and they come in pretty handy. They got maps and stuff there that you can take with you. And now you can do this kind of stuff online and check in. You know, you wonder what in the world would you look for in areas that has such a vast amount of clear cuts. Well, personally, I would look for these little trashy little pockets here that are in a more remote area, not quite out in the wide open where you can see for a half mile, but try to find these little corners where the trash comes up into the clear cut, actually meeting the SMZ. You know, in this little particular place, you got woods on the other side. The clear cut kind of narrows down to a little pinch. You got this SMZ that's real trashy. Now buck deer, he can walk through this SMZ. You can be on either side of this thing looking down in it and you're not going to see him, because this is super trashy. This might be something I would hunt. Now I hunt with a bow and arrow, so how would you hunt this with a bow and arrow? That's a good question. You would either get in the bottom down there where the thermals are dropping down early in the mornings, which is going to mess your hunt up, or you would hunt down in there in the evenings trying to catch these bucks coming up out of this little drainage down into the bottom. They're heading low, obviously, or you try to find a place where they can cross a log road. You get in a tree and catch them there. There's no real easy answer. The real answer is you got to get boots on the ground, get out here, scout, walk around, find out what these deer are doing, look for the deer tracks, trails, droppings. It takes a little bit of legwork. Not gonna get around that, guys. Got to do the homework. These particular deer, they actually do cross this road right here in this area And as you can see, there's like a little bowl. I don't know if you can tell on camera or not, but there's a big old bowl. But right here in the bottom of this bowl, they ain't got to run 30 yards before they're in trash again. They'll run this trashy bottom edge. They're not going to run on these high ridges. They'll run in the thick stuff, right along the edges or right down in the drainage itself. That's where they're going to travel. How far will they travel? As far as they have to until they get to another area that's thick cover. And get the wind right, they can stand up in the head of one of these little hollers here, stand in this thick patch of brush, and they can smell everything for 200-300 yards down through there. You're down there waiting on them, you're busted already. That's what you got to think about, the nose. How can you work the wind to your favor and still take advantage of how he's going to travel? Because he's going to use the nose to his favor when traveling from point A to point B in hunting pressured situations. He's pretty slick, guys. Give him the credit that he deserves. Now, we've had a lot of rain, but as you can see, I don't know if you can really even tell in this video or not, but those are pretty big, deep tracks right there. You know, one good thing that they probably do here in these WMAs, and I guess they do it from a timber management strategy, is they cut sections. They don't all, they don't cut the entire tract of land at once. This is a big old chunk of timber that they've cut recent, and they'll let this grow up, and then they'll cut another tract of timber. And they cut them in stages, so you get this growth of timber, and then on the other side of the road you come around here and you get this kind of growth of timber, which is several years old, and then you've got an area of trees that are still standing, which creates a lot of diversity. So this little area here, you're gonna see the deer going out there in that open cut over, probably at night. They may be staging up in this real thick stuff next to the bigger, larger timber. So a little area like this with a lot of diversity could create a potential hot spot for a big mature buck, to hang out. People drive right by this, no problem. They'll take one look at this and say, man, I ain't hunting in that nasty stuff, and they'll keep going. Which is fine, because if you just stop and pay attention, you'll see the bigger tracks right here, and you'll see the trail, and you'll notice it's going right into that mess. And there's a little drainage over there. It's hard to see with this sun, but it wouldn't take a whole lot of effort to follow that trail right there. You ain't got to go 200-300 yards. You get right back up in that little pocket. You're pretty dang close to where I was a while ago, where I said that SMZ cut across the road, and all this is in close proximity to each other. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if there ain't a pretty good mature buck just hanging out right here, letting everybody drive past him. Well, I'm kind of on the very back side of the area I was, driving around, kind of getting a bird's eye view of what's going on around this area. There's a long strip of power line goes down through there. I'm sure this probably gets hunted pretty heavily. I doubt anyone walks the half mile down there to the draw and the bottom, but if they do, they'll probably get into some pretty decent hunting down there. I would imagine it's set up on this hill where they can see a long ways, and then probably take a shot at a deer when they cross way down yonder, if they can even see it. They're probably going to cross down there where the shadows are, and deer slip across that down there pretty undetected. It's a very steep ravine over there, and that would be my guess. If a big old mature buck were to cross back and forth pretty regular along this gas line, that's where I'd cross. Way down there, where nobody would bother me. But during the rut, you never know. They may cross right here in front of you. I found me a pretty good area to hunt. A new area altogether. It's a big area. It's going to take a lot of footwork to map out this area in my head and figure out what the deer are doing, but I have one pretty good buck that's in this area according to the sign. Got big tracks. Not real giant trees being rubbed, but they're rubbed high. And I got licking branches that are, you know, eye level and higher on the scrapes. So that's what I found in this particular area. Not a lot of deer sign in here. Actually, it's more human sign than anything. It's hard to get away from people on public land. Now I'm seeing a lot of little rubs too, so you know you got a good number of smaller bucks in here. But there's a lot of deer trails coming down here. I know why they're coming down here now. They feeding at night, but the ground's just punched coming off this ridge. You see punch marks all in the ground where they're going down there feeding in there. Boy, I thought I was a ways from anything coming in here. I just got through telling a buddy of mine on the phone, I said, man, I'm 2 miles from any road, and I walk up on this. So I walked so far through here that I came back to a road. It's hard to get away from roads. Just got to find them little pockets where nobody else is hunting, I guess. You really can't see anything on the ground right here, but this is a scrape from back in the rut. And the licking branch is right at head high to me. I'm 5'8". You can see it's a pretty decent size licking branch too. It's not real thin and spindly. Looks like that limb there got broke off. Looks like that limb there got broke off. So it's a pretty tall buck that's hitting this spot here on this old log road out here in the woods. I'll kind of waypoint this area, keep it in mind, but I'll have to do a lot more scouting to locate this deer, figure out what he's doing. One other thing I kind of look for is when they do rub these trees here, they got limbs sticking off the sides of them. I like to see those limbs broke. Also, another thing I kind of keep an eye out for is the ground. Even though it's old sign, if you look real close on the ground, you can see how the deer have been just digging in the leaves and scuffing everything back. Some of it's even fresh. Hogs may have come in here a little bit later, but apparently this tree with the activity underneath it was dropping acorns. And that's the tree. That's a little bit bigger size tree that's rubbed on. And you know, he's only rubbed it waist high, so I don't really put a whole lot of effort into paying attention to these kind of signs, but it is nice to see some bigger trees being rubbed, not all small trees. I've seen a couple of them bigger than this I didn't video, but one of them looked like it was maybe chest high. That's the kind I look for, but it was on a smaller tree than this. I think the way the terrain is kind of pinching all these ridges and stuff together, this ridge top here, some people call it a crow's foot. It's got all the ridges kind of heading to it. It could be a pretty good spot to intersect deer during the rut. There's a few. You got to look really hard for them, but like there's a whole white oak tree right there, and if it's dropping acorns and they come traveling through here, you know, they could swing by that little acorn tree there, check on it, because you know, doe activity and deer activity in general will be around that tree. So any old buck coming through here searching for doe would kind of lean toward this side, especially if it's dropping acorns. Heck, he might even stop and eat on a couple of them if it's thick enough and he's hungry enough. But you know, he's got does on his mind at that time, but he'll know that tree's there, and if it's dropping, he'll go up to it and sniff around it. I'm actually just took about 10 steps and noticed this little old tree right here that got rubbed The thing I know about it, or notice about it, can't even talk today, is that it's snapped half in two. So that's an indicator that the deer's got some tines and enough tine length that he can get his antlers in there and twist on that, or he's got a tight rack. You know, you really can't tell, but that's an indicator for sure that it ain't a spike. Coming off that crow's foot ridge that I kind of liked, not too far, you got a snapped off tree, you got an acorn tree there. It was probably dropping acorns early season. It might have not have been a hot tree because it's a small white oak, but there's other white oaks and red oaks in here right on the edge of this bottom. I like its drainage because it's kind of open woods around here, but you can tell that there's a little bit more stem count, some vines and stuff like that all up and down. The trees are closer together in nature. Of course, it's greening up. It's hard to tell right now, but this is thicker than anything else around here. It ain't thick, but it's thicker than everything else around here. And if you look right here where I'm standing, there's a bank, and you can tell they pretty much had the bank cut out. And there's multiple little cuts in this bank. Another one up there about 50 yards where they're dropping off of this crowfoot ridge, this high ridge, hitting down into this drainage. And I don't know if they're just actually cutting across it, running up and down it. I'm sure they're dropping off down in there in the bottoms, feeding at night on acorns early season for sure, because that's where your acorn trees is going to be, down in there. You know, if you do this long enough, scout, walk enough woods, you start to put these pieces of the puzzle together a lot quicker than I guess maybe years ago it took. But you can see the stem count up in there on that high ridge is also pretty good. I mean, a deer ain't got to go too far one way or the other, and there's good cover. And it's hard to see deer when they're easing through that stuff real slow. You kind of got to have your wits about you and be paying attention, because it's thick. I was telling my buddy from Kentucky, he come down, did a little walking with me, found a deadhead while we were walking around, 7-point, not a big one, but it was interesting to find. And I was showing him these trails. I don't know if you can see it on this video or not, how the trails are just cut into the edges of these hills. That's not a trail in Kentucky. They wouldn't even look at that. But some of the trails on the public lands here in Alabama, that's a pretty good trail right there. So depends on where you're at as to what sign is called hot or not. If you're in ag country and you got lots of deer feeding in a particular area, you're going to have cow path beat down trails. If you're in this mountainous region or sub-mountainous region, you're not going to, I call them pine goats out here. You know, they ain't got a whole lot, they ain't got no ag for sure. It's clear cuts and whatever acorns and greenbrier stuff they can find. They're browse animals, so they travel all kinds of different directions. Their food changes constantly, so it's hard to keep up with, you know, where they're feeding and what they're not feeding on. But one thing that's pretty consistent is the bed areas, the travel routes to and from feed areas. They stay pretty consistent, and if you can pinpoint those pinch areas in between bedding and feeding, or really, I get real close to bedding myself. I don't like to get too far away from bedding, so I'm assuming, I don't have to go up there and look around, but I'm assuming there's going to be pretty good doe bedding habitat for sure up on top of that. I doubt the mature bucks be bedding in that. He's probably going to be a quarter mile or so away from here where the clear cuts is, and he's going to bed in that hard to get to stuff. You might ask me, why ain't I starting where I think the mature bucks are bedding? Well, this time of year I don't want to mess with them. I can't hunt them. I kind of know where they're at in general. I'm kind of reaching out away from those bed areas and looking at these travel corridors and feed areas and doe bedding, and you know, I want to get the big picture. Where's this deer travel to and from? Because he don't stay in one bedding area all the time. He'll relocate. He'll have 2 or 3, maybe 4 primary bed areas, and then you got to kind of figure out where he's going to be at what part of the season, You know, early season, he's probably going to be down in here feeding with these does and acorn trees and smaller bucks. And you can pinpoint where he likes to go. You know, travel routes, his rub lines, scrape lines. You know, that's his travel routes. And that's not going to change a whole lot, because that's the travel route that he travels when he feels like he's safe. He just ain't going nilly-willy go out in this open timber. He's got his specific routes he likes to take, regardless of the year. You can just see a gap right through there, just an opening. It almost looks like humans has been walking through it. The deer have walked through it just enough, and probably some hogs. We got a lot of hogs down here, but they're crossing that log right there. And one little old point that I could give somebody is, when a deer comes up to a log, a lot of times they'll stop right there at that log, and then they'll hop over it or they'll step over it. But if they're trotting along here and they get to that log, that could be a stop point for you to get a bow shot. It's kind of hard to tell, but this is a saddle out here in a long ridge, and you would think that they would cross in this saddle, but there's just a little high knob right here, and they'll go to one side of this saddle or the other side, and they'll normally cross. Instead of crossing dead in the saddle, there's a little knob like this right here. They'll ease toward it because it provides them just a little more cover. I don't know if you can see it or not, but this is the actual trail right here, and the saddle's over there to the left, but they kind of, we're going to angle this way, and then when you get on top of this little ridge here, they won't hardly run right down the top of it and skylight themselves, but there's a big deep holler over there, and then that saddle creates a draw going back to that deep holler on this long ridge on this side, and here they can kind of stand and they can hear left and right, and depending on wind direction or what they hear or what they sense is going on at the time, they may lean to the right side of this little hump or to the left side of this hump, but the end of it is going to go to the same destination as all these other ridges. And I found me another pretty decent scrape right here. Legitimately, I was standing right there. This is kind of, it's so ironic. I'm sitting here, I'm talking, I look at this spot and I go, this is what a buck would do right here in this particular area. All the deer want to venture over to this little knob. They don't want to go right through this saddle here that I was telling you about. And what do you got? You got a scrape right here. Not just any old scrape, but a pretty good scrape, because licking branch up here is above head high and it's broke off. Just to follow up a little bit on this saddle that I've located way out here in the middle of what I thought was nowhere. I'm on the other side of the saddle. You know, instead of these deer going right through the middle of the saddle, I tell you, they'll hug one side or the other. The other side of the saddle actually has more buck sign on it. You know, you can see this tree's been rubbed and limbs has been broke off of it. That and there's been broke half in two. There's a little bit bigger rub over here. I don't know how well you can see that rub, but that's on a little bit bigger tree, probably waist high, which is a decent rub. And you got these trails, that rub over there and this rub here are on two different trails, and they hug this other side of this saddle going out that ridge. There's a scrape, actually I'm standing in a scrape right next to this rub. The licking branch is not that impressive. You know, you got a bunch of small limbs, but this one here, which is broke off, and then this bigger limb, which is probably the primary limb for this scrape, they're both broke off and they're bigger in diameter. So this one here is actually above head high to me. And you look at the ground, you really can't even tell on the ground that there's a scrape here, but you can see where they had it pawed out. I don't really pay that much attention to the size of the scrapes. Sometimes I do. It depends on the location, if it's a community scrape or not. But I really pay more attention to the licking branch. And these deer, well, it's rained really hard for several days. So everything you see today is going to be super fresh. There's a little bit of a deer track in this scrape. They use these scrapes year round. You know, they communicate with scent all the time. So just because you can't see the scrape doesn't mean it ain't there. But the locations of these scrapes a lot of times, you know, are in areas where deer want to travel. All the trails pinch together. The saddles cause two different pinches, one to each side. So you can kind of guesstimate what a buck might do when he comes through here. Is this a place I would hunt? Man, I don't know. Unless it's full-blown rut, you wouldn't probably catch me here, because I want to get close and tight to where the deer actually spend the majority of their daytime hours. This is open woods, so I'm assuming just from the looks and the lay of the land that unless it's full-blown rut and the deer's traveling from point A to point B trying to locate does, you probably would not catch a big mature buck here on this scrape. So is it a huntable scrape? No, not in my opinion. There's a log road that runs all the way down here, pretty close to that saddle that I was telling you about. But anytime you find a log road like this right here out in open pretty woods, you can almost see where all the humans have been walking up and down this log road. It's literally got a trail beat down through it. Well, I'm fixing to go back and get my son. We're going to come back down here and do a little bit of scouting. I spotted a turkey up on that ridge. See if I can't get it on film for you. I mean, it's a decent rub. Probably waist high to you.
Maybe. You can tear the bark off of it.
This is the giant licking branch that most people hunt right here. This licking branch is every bit of, if I get down on my knees and I scooch down real low, there's a licking branch and there's a scrape. That's a giant monster. No, I'm just joking. Here's the big boy, and people might even overlook this because you barely can even see the ground scraped right here. This is the scrape. I'm standing upright, looking up above, and there's the licking branch right here above my head. This gets me excited. I like this, buddy. This is an indicator there might be one good one in here. What do you think? I was down here earlier this morning scouting around, found the indicator of a decent buck in this area. Matthew wasn't doing nothing, he's off, so we're back down here to go do a little more scouting. See if we can't find something hot. It ain't a bad rub. It was hit this year. They not gonna look fresh this late in the year. That's decent. There's a ridiculous amount of deer utilizing this trail. It's crazy. I'm kind of just staying up on a bench. I figure all these trails are gonna merge down here. My son, he's in the draw headed that way. We're gonna end up in the same spot. Is that rub line going downhill or uphill?
Paralleling.
It's paralleling?
Yep. Going up high, it'll come back down to it.
We're gonna meet right up yonder, I guarantee it.
10. Rubbed all over me right here.
So you got 10 10 rows within.
11.
Alright.
See, 12 up there. This little hub right here, rubs going in all directions, but the trails are going up and down. We're probably going to see the same thing over there.
Well, this is that finger right here. This finger and that finger there. Majority, there's rubs over here, but they're all old rubs, and they're paralleling this drainage, but they're gonna.
These are terribly fresh, but they've been at least early season rubs.
Well, if you stand here and look at the terrain, where I'm standing right here, they're gonna come off this point and the point to the right of me, and they're gonna end up where you're at. Correct? They're not going. They will parallel that ridge all the way up through there.
They will. There's a parallel trail with rubs.
But what we're looking for in this area is where they cross all these parallel trails. And I think this trail and that trail over there and that other draw is two good spots to set up. We can get to this spot pretty easy. Go ahead and waypoint that spot. I waypointed that other spot. And you waypointed that other cluster of rubs too, didn't you?
I didn't. I forgot. But I know where it is. I can use your waypoint, my waypoint to get it.
We can project that waypoint. It's right at the end.
My hunt's staying out. It's not wanting to open over here.
Right here where I'm at, they're basically sliding down this hill.
Yeah, the best trail.
And they're crossing, and they're literally going right straight up to where you're at.
Right, or the best trails to my right.
Oh yeah, on the other side of that rock, that's a good trail coming up the side. They all splitting.
That's the trail. There's no defined trail right here, just a bunch of rubs.
Well, it doesn't matter. This is the area, and once you hunt it once or twice, you'll be able to pinpoint. Right, I like where you're standing because you got all them protruding rocks to your left and to the right, and it opens up on both sides. It'd be too exposed. I think where you're at's probably we real close to the bow kill spot. Well, there's at least one man in here. I'm looking at a real old scrape here. They ain't really hit that tree too heavy, but the licking branches are above my head. That's a tall deer, reach that. Well, you know, there's at least one signpost rub in here, and it's a decent rub, so. That's what you said, that's where you said it would be. You said they should be rubs in here. We got one rub in here. Right there, he killed that tree years ago.
He's up and over.
That tells you right, what does that tell you right here? You come up here looking for a bunch of rubs and you get to this spot and you find all the rubs in this one little spot. What does that indicate to you?
At one time there was a deer standing there.
At one time there was a deer standing there. This is his travel route. You got rubs on both sides, trees going both directions. He's going to be up high coming around the edge of this pine thicket. He can walk quieter up here than he can down there, can't he? This might be a daylight hunt spot right here. Actually, the deer trail goes dead under it, don't it? Right here, I got fresh deer tracks right here, and right here the trail splits right there where you are. So that would be too close. Maybe this tree over, dadgum, there's a trail over there too. I can see it from here. There got to be a trail right here where I can get to without crossing all these trails. I think this is the tree. A lot of there's deer droppings everywhere over here. They still using this area pretty heavy. A lot of punch marks. They're coming off this ridge, straight down this ridge.
I think they're bedding up here.
You think they're bedding up there? Could be. I'm gonna waypoint this tree right here because this is where all the intersection trails are. And then I can delete it later if I get up there. Dadgum, there's another trail here under this tree. Son, this is the better trail right here. I don't want to sit dead on top of them. I'm still gonna waypoint this spot. I'll figure it out when season gets here. There's one bed, first bed right there. It's a small bed.
It is.
But you're right.
Confirms what I was saying.
Yeah, they bedding right here.
I think that's an old bed back there.
I bet there's deer hair in that bed there.
Oh yeah, that's today.
You know, I told you, look, here's a bed over here too, I think.
Yeah, this will be a group of does.
I think this is another bed. I can't tell from here.
There's a lot of deer hair in this one. We just got this one up.
That's probably the one I saw a while ago.
Ground's still warm.
That's the one I saw then. I told you there's a deer over here got up. Is it really still warm?
No, I'm just joking. But there is hair all over the place, isn't it?
Well, I did see a deer, but the deer I saw was down there. It may have got up, come down there to see what we were, and then ran back up. It ran this way.
If you see a fresh bed, it's in the last 24 hours because we just had rain.
Yeah, anything you see right now is going to be fresh. There's got to be more than one bed here. You see a deer?
No, I said better deer.
Oh yeah. I like when they're high rubs and when they're broke off. There's definitely a good deer in here. There was two beds down there. The other bed just wasn't fresh like the one you put your hand in. The other bed was a little bit bigger, but it's probably just a doe in her fawn, if I had to guess. Let's see. All right.
We're going to get us to that road pretty soon.
I know where we're at. I'm not lost. We're not too far before we get to that road, and we'll hook back and go back toward the truck.
Those would be.
How high is that licking branch? Where's the better licking branch? It's right here on this end, ain't it?
I don't really see where they've broken off any of them. But
About head high.
Just saying, this is probably the outskirt area of where those does were dead.
There's a better scrape. I think we'll pass it on the way back out when we make our loop. I'll show it to you. Yeah, I videoed this exact scrape earlier. I like that licking branch, how it's all twisted off and marred up about head high.
Yeah.
And what this trail does is, this morning I was standing right in here, and in my mind, I didn't want to go to the right. I wanted to scout where we scouted, to the left. The reason is everything to the right
It's open.
is going to be more hunted. Going to be way more pressure back that direction. A little more difficult to get to.
You have this fire break right here that's thick. And this is obviously a deep bottom, but the woods in that bottom and all the ends of those ridges over there towards the sunset,
Yeah.
wide open woods.
Sun setting on us.
So that spot on the other side from where we're standing, catching them coming out of all this stuff, coming back to the thick. And then this side is probably your evening spot, catching them coming from bedding.
Oh, I'm gonna catch them. That draw. I'm going in that draw. I'm gonna sit in that draw and catch them deer traveling, coming out of that big timber, coming up. They're gonna hook around into this bedding. Up here, this is more of a rut setting. Up on this, yeah. They'll come through here during the rut, but this is not what I'm gonna look for early season. That last little spot where you saw all them clusters of rubs, if I can get down there to that top bench without spooking deer, that's where I want to be. I want to be right there where the deer are.
You can access that from the creek. You can walk that road all the way to the creek and walk back up
Well,
if you wanted to. But this is what all the other ridges
yeah, that's
look like this.
all that open timber.
Yeah, open hardwoods. Which, early season this will be thick.
They'll come. You can hunt this side early season if you find the hot acorn trees, because they'll come out. They'll cross this little old ridge. Back there in that saddle where all them trails pinched together, you could probably set up pretty close to it and catch all these deer coming over to this side. You remember, well, you didn't go to Kentucky with me when me and Tom went to Kentucky. There was a area that looked real similar to this. It was real thick on one side of the ridge, and the other side of the ridge. That's what I'm talking about. Get that shed antler, boy. It's a giant. Look like an elk. But what the deer were doing over there in Kentucky is they'd come out of that bed area, they'd cross over that little high ridge, drop off on a little point just like this. They'd hit an acorn tree, and then they'd clean up every acorn under that tree, and they'd bounce around the head of a holler to another one. They'd circle around below me, come back up flat, and then they just made a loop. They had like 3 acorn trees that they were feeding on. And they'd come out of there and they'd hit all 3 acorn trees and then go back to bed.
I think there's turkey down there trying to roost. A lot of turkey over here.
Probably that same turkey you run off a while ago.
A couple of rubs on this flat. You might be able to, early season, you might be able to sit right here and catch something.
I think so.
There's a lot of white oaks right here. It's got enough, like, when it's early season, this will be thick.
Yep.
Because of all these smaller trees.
Well, you got the white oaks right here close to bedding.
Right. I wanted to see if there was a rub, and there's one right down there. So.
They ain't really got to come 30, 40 yards out of bedding.
This
And you ain't gonna.
You could fill a buck on.
And where you're at, you ain't gonna sneak up on them from this side.
Nope.
No way.